Alright, video here for a single engine taxi and why you might want to do that sort of thing and how to set up the aircraft to do so. We've got a flight set up here for from Chicago to Minneapolis. Aircraft's all set up, all briefings, checklists are complete, so we can dive right into the task at hand. We'll set up our push. We are on the APU, so we can remove the chocks and not drop down to battery power if we hadn't done that. Standard OL, we'll turn the nose to the left, select the tug, and we'll get started. Alright, why would you want to do this? Maybe you're in an airport with a long taxi where there's a long line of traffic and you know you've got a long time to sit out there and wait. Maybe you've got an edict, an expected departure clearance time, where you're going to spend some time sitting out there at the end of the runway that you want to get off the gate in case they can get you out sooner.
Brakes released.
When would you not want to do this? Well, maybe you need that first flight of the day. Maybe you need the 5 minutes on the engines. Maybe your push direction isn't going to allow you to single engine taxi because you've got to turn into the operating engine, which is really tough. Maybe it's a short taxi like Chicago without any real traffic. Maybe you've got slippery, icy conditions. You know, you would want a single engine taxi. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, a lot of things to keep in mind. So, you know, we've gotten our push clearance from ground, anti-collision light is on. Clearance to start the engines from the ground crew, so we'll do so. We'll start the number 2 and only the number 2. And we'll do a engine start just like we would normally. Got oil pressure. Light off. We'll go ahead and stop them right here. And we've got roll back. Alright, so typically we would start that clock, but since we're only going to single engine, we'll just wait on that until we get both engines started so that we've got our time on our engines for warm-up. So pretty standard here for the most part. Do our after start flow. Any ice we don't need. All pumps are coming on. The air panel's where it gets tricky. So you've got the number 2 engine started, so we would do our typical isolate, ventilate to get airflow to the cabin. Now, since we're going to single engine taxi, we have no intention of operating this number 1 engine to give air to this pack. We'll just go ahead and do it off the APU. So we'll go ahead and flip it on. But to get rid of the dual bleed light, we'll take off the number 1 engine bleed switch. You can see on the gauge the left duct is actually getting a lot more pressure from the APU than that engine gives that right-hand pack. If I power up a little bit, you'll see at higher than idle, the engines do a pretty decent job, but they don't do quite as good of a job as the APU. So there's more than one way to skin a cat. You could simply run both packs off the APU since you're not allowed to run 2 packs off of 1 engine. You could also run both packs off the APU in high, perfectly acceptable. You could also run 1 pack from the number 2 engine on high with the isolation closed and run the left pack in high off the APU. So, you know, there's more than one way to do this. The before takeoff checklist is going to call for both packs to be in auto. You're not allowed to take off or land with the packs in high. So, you know, for the purposes of today, we'll say it's hot outside. This is how we want to run it. Wheel well light comes off. Engine start switch on the right side. Continuous, we'll leave it in right, and we'll leave the APU on for our number 1 engine start. Overhead panel looks pretty normal at this point. We're not running the number 1 engine, so the drive light is on for the generator. and low pressure from the engine hydraulic pump. Perfectly normal. The rest of the flow then, transponder is TARA. Our number 2 engine is in the idle position. Our oil quantity on the right side hasn't fallen significantly. It is lower than the left-hand engine, but that makes sense. This one's not even running, whereas this oil is cycling and circling through the engine system. FO is going to put his hand on that flap lever, and he's going to say standing by flaps after he's completed his flow. Captain's going to look at the page here, and he's going to say flaps 1. Control check. Flaps go to 1. Control check is just the same as always. The captain does the lowers, the FO does the uppers. And before taxi checklist, or taxi checklist is electrical. Generators on. APU supplying power to the left side. Number 2 engine generators supplying power to the right side. Generators on. Probe heat on. Anti-ice off. Flight controls are free. Flaps, we've got CDU 1, indicates 1 with a green light. Transponder is TARA, and the flight deck windows are closed and locked. Before taxi checklist complete. Get our taxi clearance from ground. Captain throws on the taxi light, clear left, clear right, and we'll start the taxi. 40% is about as good as you're going to be able to do on the ramp here. That's sort of a limitation as far as thrust output on congested ramps and taxiways. Best way to do this, don't try to turn right away. Get a little bit of forward momentum so that when you turn that nose wheel, you're not trying to move the airplane with as much friction off that nose wheel. But keep it coming left as good as you can. Try to keep that wingtip clear. Got a good FO over there. Just keeping my wingtip clear. Let's find the taxiway line. Get on it. And, you know, if we were trying to make a right turn out right there, that would have been really difficult. So you probably would have just started both engines in that case. Also, if they wouldn't have pushed you back very far, you might need both engines. So it could be tough. Try to be cognizant of any traffic or any aircraft that are behind you so that you don't blast those fellas. A lot of considerations in doing this. So at some point here, we'll make our turn over to the left and take it out to 3-1 center. The windsock does not approve of my runway choice today, but this is simply demonstration purposes. Alright, at some point you're going to get out here, and you're going to notice that maybe you're number 2 in line, or number 3 in line, and you just need 2 minutes for engine warm-up. So, you know, you try to gauge your decision-making process on how long you think it's going to be before it's your turn to take off. You also have to consider your number of arrivals. It could be several minutes in between departures and arrivals. The idea here is we're trying to save gas. But, you know, we've got the packs set up, one off the APU, one off the engine, so that we've got plenty of cooling going on in the cabin. Cooling's really not a consideration. It's more of a fuel savings thing. Now, we were cleared to cross. However, since we're crossing, we want to bring those lights on. We'll take Echo 3 here, lane, over 2, and hold short of 3-1 center. And then we'll stop the aircraft just so we can talk. It's awfully hard to do all of this by yourself. And of course the lights are just, you know, no one but you is going to know the difference. So we'll stop here, we'll set the brake, and we'll go through a few more things. We'll take those lights off since we're stopped here, clear up that runway. Now at some point the captain, he's going to make that determination. It's time to start that number 1 engine. So all you're going to need to do is, since this side is already isolated, just bring that pack off and you can start number 1. And you look here, it's already starting to roll up. And now typically this would be done on the roll. We don't necessarily have to stop to start these engines. It's just more of a, at the discretion of the crew, the captain. Captain would be driving and steering while you're starting the engine. The FO's job is to pay attention to start these engines and make sure that he's not going to have a hot start, honk start, any of that sort of thing. So we got oil pressure, we got light off. So this is probably going to be done on the taxi on the roll, but it's, as I said, it's very difficult to do in the game. So we'll just go ahead and stop the airplane and start this engine. Starter cutout, you can hear the click. And we've got rollback. Let's start the timer. We want to make sure we get that timer going now that we've got both engines started, because we do need that 2 minutes of warm-up time for the engine. So perhaps we're number 2 in line for takeoff. So we got that engine started, we got the timer going, and we'll finish out our after start flow. We'll bring the other generator online. And the other stuff we're just going to check again here. Window heat, probe heat, anti-ice is off. Hydraulic pumps are already on. We will reconfigure our air panel at this point. We can bring the APU off. Watch that duct pressure drop. We can bring the number 1 bleed on. We can bring the pack on. We can make the other pack to auto. Isolation valve to auto. And now it looks pretty familiar. You're ready for takeoff in that configuration with the packs in auto and the APU off. Wheel well is off. Both engine start switches left continuous. No longer need the APU. We're done with that. APU is off. And now you're again just double checking transponder TARA. It's been that way since before push. Engine start levers are idle. Oil quantity, you can see the number 1 is dropped down quite a bit, and it's about the same now as what the number 2 is. Standing by flaps, except that we're just double checking to make sure that the flaps are set. Indeed, 1 and 1 with a green light. Almost 2 minutes, about a minute and a half. We're waiting on our time still. Perhaps now we're next for takeoff. We can do our throttle burst. Auto throttle's armed. 1 ding for the flight attendants. PMDG glitch there with the doors. And fuel is verified. We've got our minimum takeoff fuel before takeoff checklist. Departure plan is not required. Attendant notification complete. Electrical generators on. Anti-ice off. Packs auto at this point. Remember, you cannot take off or land in high, so packs are auto. Bleeds, engines on, APU off. Start switches left continuous, APU off. Flaps, CDU 1 indicates 1 with a green light. Start levers, idle, and recall checked. Of course, that's the doors. PMDG's got a nice little glitch there. When you do that throttle burst, there is an issue with those doors, so just keep that in mind. Recall checked before takeoff checklist complete. You're ready for departure. You've got 2.5, almost 3 minutes on the engines. You've got the warm-up. You're ready to go. That's a single engine taxi. I hope that helps.